Hello everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to create vaulting system with random animation in Unreal Engine 5. But before we start, please like this video and subscribe my channel for more Unreal Engine tutorials. Thank you. Alright, first I'm going to make sure that motion warping plugin is enabled in my engine. So here from Edit tab I open plugins, and here I search for motion warping, and as you can see this plugin is already enabled in my project. But if you don't have this plugin enabled, make sure to enable it. Alright, for this tutorial I have two different vaulting animations. First one is this and another one is this one, and I share the download link of these animations in comment sections of this video. So first I'm going to enable root motion for both of these animation assets. So here in the asset detail section I search for root motion and I set enable root motion to true, and I also do the same for second animation asset. Alright, now here I'm going to create anim montage from these anim assets, and here for example I open this first vaulting animation, and here in this section as you can see I have notify tracks, and here I hit this icon and I insert another notify track, and I place this timeline cursor on frame 4, and here I right click on this notify track, and from add notify state section I add a motion warping notify, and the beginning of this motion warping notify is frame 4, and the end is right here, for example frame 17. And I also here, but before that I select this motion warping and I set a name for this motion warping notify. I name it warp 1, and here I set ignore Z axis to false, and I set warp rotation to true. Alright, now here I place this timeline cursor on frame 26, and now I insert another motion warping notify state. The beginning of this notify state is on frame 26 and the end is on frame 41. Alright, now for second motion warping notify state I set ignore Z axis to true, and I set warp rotation to false. Alright, and I name this second motion warping notify state, I name it warp 2. Alright, and now I place this timeline cursor on frame 37 right here, and now I right click on this notify track, and here I add another motion warping notify state, and I place the end of this notify motion warping notify state on frame 50, and I name it warp 3, and I set ignore Z axis to false, and I also set this warp rotation to false. Alright, now I save and close this montage. Now I open my second montage, and here first I place this cursor on frame 0, and here I insert my first motion warping notify, and the end of this motion warping notify state should be on frame 10. I drag it and I set the same names that I made for previous montage, and here I name it warp 1, and I set ignore Z axis to false, and this warp rotation should be true. Alright, now here exactly after this second motion warping notify state, I should place my second motion warping notify state, and the end of this one should be on frame 24 right here. I name it warp 2, and for this one ignore Z axis should be true and warp rotation should be false. Alright, and now I place this timeline cursor right here, and I place my third motion warping notify state and drag it to the end of this montage, and I name this motion warping notify state warp 3, and I set ignore Z axis to false, and I also set this warp rotation to false. Alright, now I save and close this montage. Alright, now I open my character blueprint, which in this case is BP underscore third person character, and here I create a new function and I name it vaulting. Alright, now from here I drag a node and search for loop with break. This one exactly, and I set first index to 0 and second index to 2, and here I drag a node from this index output and add a multiply node and multiply it by 30. Now from here, from the loop body, I drag a node and add a sphere trace by channel node. I search for a sphere trace by channel. Alright, and first I connect this draw debug type input to here. So now I have this draw debug type as an input, and now here I search for draw debug type and connect it to here. Now I right click and search for get actor location. Get actor. Alright, and here I drag a node and add this add vector, and I right click here and click on split extract pin, and I connect this multiplier to this Z axis, and now I connect it to start point of this line trace by channel. And for the endpoint, here I right click and search for get actor rotation. Now I drag a node and search for get forward vector, and now here I drag a node and multiply it by I add a multiply node, and now I convert it to float, and now I multiply it by 180. And from here now I drag a node and add this add vector node and connect it to here, and now I connect it to this endpoint, and I set radius of this sphere trace by channel to 5. And okay, now I compile and go back to event graph, and here I right click and search for left shift input, left shift button input, and now here I call my vaulting function, and I set this draw debug type input to for duration, and now I run the game, and here as you can see, as I press left shift, these 3 traces will be drawn in front of my character. Alright, now I go back to my vaulting function, and here first I drag a node and add a branch node, and I also drag a node from this out hit and click on brick hit result. And now from through section of this branch I drag a node and add a sequence node and connect this first pin to brick input of this for loop with break node, and I double click on this line and create some reroute nodes to keep everything more clean and organized. Okay, and from this second execution pin I drag a node and add another for loop with break. And from this loop body I drag a node and search for a sphere trace by channel. Now, and I set radius to 10, and I also connect this draw debug type input to here. Now from this brick hit result of this first sphere trace of channel, I drag a node from this location and I add this add vector node, and here I insert 100 on z axis, and I also set this last index of for loop with break to 5, and first I make some room here and I drag a node from this index of for loop with break and I multiply it by 50. Alright, and from here I drag a node and add this add vector node, and here I right click and search for get actor rotation. Alright, and I also get forward vector, and now I add the multiply node, convert it to float or maybe integer, and I connect this one to here, and also connect it to here, and I connect this pin to start location, and for end location I drag a node and add a subtract vector node, and here I insert 100 and I connect it to the end. Alright, now I select another color for this sphere trace. For example, now I choose this green color. Now I compile and run the game. As you can see, I have 6 sphere channels in a row in front of my character. Alright, now here after second sphere trace by channel, I drag a node and add a branch node and connect it to here, and I also here I get brick hit result of this sphere trace. After this branch node from through section, I add a sequence node, and after in this sequence node from first execution pin, again I add another branch node, and for condition of this branch node I drag a node and get this equal node and connect it to index of this loop, and I connect it to here, and this one should be equal to 0. And now I create a new variable in type of vector, and I name it vault start position. Alright, and here after this through section of this branch node, I drag and get setter of this variable, and I connect the location of this hit result to this variable, and I also here I drag a node and search for draw debug sphere. Alright, and for example here I select a purple color, and I also connect this to center of this draw debug sphere. Now I compile and run the game, and as you can see, sorry, I should set radius to 10 and also duration to 5 and thickness to 2. Okay, and here as you can see, this purple sphere shows exact location of my vaulting start position. Alright, and now from here this sequence I drag a node, but before that I should create another variable in type of vector again, and I name it vault middle position. And I also create another one and name it vault land position. Alright, and here I drag and set my vault middle position right here, and I connect it to this second execution pin. I also connect this location of brick hit result of this sphere trace to here, and now I create another draw debug sphere. I simply get a copy of this node, and now I choose another color, for example this green color, and now I compile, and as you can see this green sphere shows the middle position of vaulting. Alright, and now I create another variable in type of boolean, and I name it can vault. And now I get setter of this boolean variable, and here I set it to true. Now here from this false section of this branch node, I drag a node and add a line trace by channel, and now I drag a node from here, this trace start of this brick hit result of this sphere trace, and I add this add vector, and here I right click and search for get actor rotation, and now I get forward vector, and now I multiply it by, I add a multiply node and convert it to float and multiply it by 80, and now I connect it to here, and I connect it to start, and for endpoint I drag a node from here and add a subtract vector node, and I subtract it by 1000 on Z axis and connect it to the end. And finally here I add a branch node, connect it to here, and I also get brick hit result, and now I set my vault land position here, connect it to here, and I set location of this brick hit result to here, and again I create a new draw debug sphere, a new debug sphere. For this one I set the color to black. Now I compile and run the game, and as you can see here this black spheres show the landing position, but here it is a problem, so I simply connect this draw debug sphere to here, break off this loop, a second loop. Alright, now I compile and run the game again. Alright, as you can see now I have a start, middle and land position of my vaulting. Now I go back to my character blueprint. Here I compile, and now I open event graph, and now here I find some free space, and here I create a custom event and I name it vault warp. Alright, now here I drag a node and add a branch node, and Now I drag and drop my mesh component here, and now I drag a node and search for get word location, and I right click and split extract pin, and I also get my vault land position here, and I also right click and split extract pin, and now I drag a node from this Z position and search for in range float, this one. Now I drag a node from this Z value and add it by 50 and connect it to maximum, and I also get another drag another node from this Z value and subtract it by 50 and connect it to minimum value. Alright, and from here I drag a node and search for and boolean node, and I connect my can vault variable to here, and I connect this to condition of this branch node. Now for true section of this branch node, first I drag and drop my character movement component, and here I drag a node and search for set movement mode, and here I set it to flying, and here I drag a node and search for set actor enable collision, this one, and I set this collision to false. And now I should add motion warping component to my character blueprint, so here I simply hit this add icon and search for motion warping. Now I drag and place it here, and here I drag a node and search for add or update warp target. Update warp target, and here I right click on this warp target and click on split extract pin, and here I need a name that should be name of my first motion warping notify state. For example, here for this animation I have warp 1. I open this anim montage and copy the exact name and paste it here. And for location I get my vault start position and connect it here. And for rotation I simply right click here and search for get actor rotation. Alright, now I select this node, and this one, and copy and paste them here. And for second warp update I connect my vault middle position, connect it to here, and I also should insert name of my second motion warping notify state, which is warp 2. Alright, and again I copy these 3 nodes for third time, and this time I insert my vault land position, connect it here, and here I should insert name of my third motion warping notify state. Alright, and now here I drag and drop my mesh, and I drag a node from here and search for play montage. And for montage to play, I right click on this input and promote it to a variable, and here I set the name of this variable to vault animation. In this case I'm going to use random animations for my vaulting, which means every time I vault, a random animation between these two animation assets will be played. So here I disconnect it, and here in this section I change variable type to array. Now I compile so I can insert default value to this variable, and I hit this icon to add more elements to my array. And for first index I set my vault anim1 and vault anim2, and now I drag a node from here and search for random array item and connect it to here. And now again I get my character movement, and now here I search for set movement mode, and now here I set it back to walking, and I connect it to this uncompleted pin. And here I also set actor enable collisions to true. Set it to true. And finally I get setter of my can vault variable and set it to false, and after that I get my vault land position and get setter of this vault land position variable and set z axis to a huge number like 40,000. Alright, now I compile and I go back to my vaulting function, and here this second loop I drag a node from completed execution pin, and here I call my vault warp event, just like this. Okay, now I compile and run the game. Alright, as you can see my character vaults with random animation, as you can see in the video. Alright, if this tutorial was useful for you, please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.